ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקרא, ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקרא, ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה Sayin kalamay budi mamay zamamayla ila besiyim khamesa sayin kalamay budi mamay zamamayla besiyim khamesa sayin kalamay budi mamay zamamayla ila besiyim khamesa sayin La Yehudim Amaisa Pavara Ila Vesim Chavesa Saivika Lama Yehudim Amaisa Pavara Ila Vesim Chavesa Saivika Lama Yehudim Amaisa Pavara Ila Vesim Chavesa Saivika Yehudim Amaisa V'simcha v'sasarika. So, what we're talking about is the idea that intention can carry us through, can accompany us throughout the performance of an act, right? Even though while you're in the middle of the act, you might not be conscious of that intention, right? So, why is that? Why is that? Okay. So, what we were learning that yesterday, 2 days ago, you were here, I believe, but not yesterday. Right? Fink was saying that it's very important before Purim to really think about why are you going to be drinking? And what is it that you want to accomplish with your drinking, right? And if you have proper intention, then you will achieve something positive in the process. But if you're just saying, "Oh wow, this is like cool party," everybody's letting loose, I'm going to let loose also. Well, you might let your monster escape, so to speak, right? It's like, like for example, Robin and I were talking about some of the big mistakes therapists were making in the past. One of them is that there were therapists who said you should express your anger. You ever heard of that? Right? Now the fact of the matter is that that's not a very good thing, because when you start letting your anger out, it becomes it takes on like sort of like a kind of a personality of its own, because all of a sudden, you're screaming at somebody and you see the reaction of they start to cower away from you, and your Yitzhak comes in and says, "See, you're really got power. Let him have it even more. Let him have it even more, right?" Mm-hmm. And you'll find that if today you let your anger go for 2 minutes, tomorrow it's going to be 3 minutes, and the next day it's going to be 10 minutes. It's just going to keep on getting worse and worse. Okay. So there are definitely things. There are things in our being that we need to deal with. Things in our character that we need to deal with. And then there are certain character traits that the only way to deal with them is by keeping them under a solid lid. In other words, you might not be capable of handling this part of yourself, and maybe your only real test in vis-a-vis this particular trait is to keep it under a lid, right? Whereas some therapists would say, no, take the lid off and face your what do they call it? Your devil, or face your demon. Face your demon, right? Well, some demons are better to just keep them locked up because you might not be ready to face it. You understand? And it's like in like, for example, right, in AA, there's certain things that this is something I cannot do, right? And the only way to deal with it is by not doing it, right? Plain and simple, okay? And like I have a friend.
There's a difference, though.
Wait, I'm not. Yeah. Let me just keep on looking down, okay? Now, so intention is. So how do you control that? How do I get involved in anything? Okay, so let's take a holy example. You sit down to learn Torah, right? Now, what does the Mishnah say in Turkey about? That if somebody learns Torah to use it as a shovel to dig with, in other words, let's say, like I got to make a career choice. You know what? Nowadays, you become a woman rabbi, you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to find a job. Okay?
Really?
Yeah. And
How do you consider it?
No. That's
You should stop that thought right now.
Okay.
I don't think I should stop that thought right now. I'll just continue it later.
And good salary.
I will.
Good salary, right? So I'm going to study Torah, whether it's a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. I'm just giving, I'm going to study Torah so that I can get myself like a good job, right? That's using the Torah as a shovel. Okay, the Mishnah speaks about that. Totally dangerous. Okay? Another phrase in the Mishnah: "Udishtamesh betaga chalach." If somebody uses the crown, God's crown, for their own aggrandizement, they're also like they're wiping themselves out from Olam Haba. Okay. Now, so you're sitting down to learn, or you're attending a shiur, right? And I remember this happened, and the Rebbe giving the shiur, like, was teaching the Tosfos, and he was giving a whole introduction about how he's got this huge, they called it a bomba, this bomb of a question on something that the commentator says there in the Talmud. And he's presenting his whole lecture, okay? And basically, I'm looking at the words of the Tosfos, and basically I saw that he misread one word. And I picked up a hand and I said, "Excuse me, but look at this sentence again." And that destroyed his whole shiur. Okay? Now, what happened inside me, naturally? I knocked off the professor, right? Yeah. Or even if it wouldn't be like that, even if you're sitting and you're learning, and you're learning Torah, and you're like, and the fact of the matter is that when you're learning Torah, you've got to use your brains, right? And you come across a difficult passage, and you sit there and you work on it, and you come up with a good solution. Okay, come up with a good solution. How could you not feel proud? And why shouldn't I feel proud? Right? But the question is, what exactly is this pride about? Is it about me? Okay, or is it about, thank you, God, that you gave me this ability to have this insight and so on, right? Am I using it for myself, or am I using it for Hashem's honor? Okay. I was at years ago, there was on the yard side of the PSS, the Ish Kodesh, there was a big gathering in Meir Sharim, and the rabbi who was speaking was the mashpia in a big yeshiva, and he was like for an hour, like he was like doing some real soul searching and crying and this and that and so on and so on. Then when he finished and he was putting his glasses back on, okay, for for 2 seconds, he looked around the room to see, did I impress you? And I literally, I'm saying literally, right? Okay, but I literally saw that in those 2 seconds, the Satan stole everything that he did. He stole it from him. Okay, he stole it from him. He lost everything that he did in that hour. Bye. You know, when the Reb Shlomo and his brother came the first time to the Maggid of Mizrich, he described to them, the Maggid described to them their service, how they're serving Hashem in davening and how they're learning and so on, and which was extraordinary. And then he says to them, if at the end of the day you have the slightest thought of egotistical pride, okay, the angels take everything that you did and they make it into a snowball and throw it in the fire. How long does the snowball last in the fire, right? Okay. Now, so how do you avoid that, right? So that's where the intention at the beginning becomes very important. Okay? So that's why before, if you look at Masechet Brachot, and it's even printed in some Gemaras on the inside cover, like the Yehi Ratzon, the prayer that you say before learning, Hashem, please, I want the learning to be in the highest way. Now, what you need to do every so often is stop, like every 15 minutes, every half an hour, and remind yourself why you're learning. And remind yourself, that you how you want this to be sincere. Okay? So then it does work. I think I once told you the story, but I know that I've told the story over, but maybe not to you guys. 2 stories. The shorter one first. The son of Rav comes into this Medrash, big Hasidic master and Talmud scholar, and he sees a young man that's really proud. So he says, what are you so proud about today? So he says, I just learned like 15 pages of Talmud, and it was great. So he says, why are you so happy? He says, I just learned 15 pages of Talmud, it was so awesome. So he says, if you learned in the name of all of Israel, then I have a part in it too, and I'm also happy. But if you didn't learn in the name of all of Israel, I have no interest in what you did. Okay? Into the Shem Yichud at the beginning of Purim II, says, for the sake of the unification of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Shekhinah, to unite Yud-Kei with Vav-Kei in a complete union, B'Shem Kol Yisrael, in the name of all of Israel. Now, when you're praying, how much of the time are you actually, I don't mean you, I mean me, okay? But how much of the time am I actually thinking that? B'Shem Kol Yisrael, right? You'd have to be quite an advanced meditator. You'd have to be quite advanced. And what I mean by that is meditation is basically the process of learning to be in control of your thoughts. right? That's what meditation is about. So you have to be quite advanced that you can maintain your consciousness. Even for 5 minutes is already pretty advanced, right? Especially in this age, in this day and age of ADD, right? Everybody that you know, like on your left and your right, oh, I'm suffering from ADD, right? So to learn how to be in control of your consciousness for a minute, for 3 minutes is already more than what people are familiar with, right? So the only choice that I have is that to sit down beforehand and to think about why am I doing this? What is the consciousness I want to do it with? And Hashem, please help me maintain that consciousness. And when I forget, please help me remember. And actually make strategies that every so often that you can check on yourself. That's the way it works. Okay? So here's the other story. The dog, please.
Someone mentioned yesterday about applying this to life.
Straighten out the carpet while you're there, Oriel. 1 second. Oriel, please straighten out the carpet. Please straighten out the carpet. Straighten it out. Straighten it out. Look at this. It's the lady who threatened me that I'm going to see her too often. So far, your threat is not yet a serious threat. Welcome. So here's the story. You know, Chabad is not satisfied with just having people learn Hasidus in their own yeshivas. The story is that the Baal Shem Tov, there's a letter from the Baal Shem Tov to his brother-in-law that one Rosh Hashanah he journeyed up into the spiritual realms and he went to the chamber of Mashiach and he said, Mosai Kosimar, when will the master come? And Mashiach answered him, when your wellsprings will be bursting outward. And hence, particularly Chabad, but not only, has taken it on to spread the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. Okay? Now, right, and there's even a song that is in Mosai Kosima Lishe Yefutsu. Have you heard that, Dan? In the yeshiva? Okay. When is the master going to come? When your teachings are going to be flooding the world. Okay. So that's why Chabad spends a fortune, Chabad.org, printing things all across the world. They spend a fortune to bring Hasidut to the world.
Chabad in Kathmandu. It was a Chabad house in Kathmandu.
Yeah.
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 So
it's right, because it's really like, like they see this as their mission, okay? Now, so how do you spread Hasidic teachings in a yeshiva like this? So what Chabad does is they'll ask for permission to come in. Anybody who wants to study Hasidut, thank you. Anybody who wants to study Hasidut, like, they'll come in after the class. And if the yeshiva gives permission, great. And if the yeshiva doesn't give permission, they'll find some way to do it underground. Literally. So Rabbi Yoel Khan, who was the Rebbe's Chayzer, the one, like, with that awesome memory that all these foreign that we have of what the Rebbe said on Shabbos and Yom Tov got written down. So he used to go to Lakewood. This is a story from back in the late 50s, early 60s. He used to go Lakewood. Lakewood is, Reb Aaron Kotler was very, very against Chabad. So he used to go to Lakewood, and he would learn with a group of students, I guess, quietly. And one day, one of these students says to him, there's one guy here in the yeshiva that everybody's like totally impressed with his learning. And if you can get him to come to study Hasidus, half the yeshiva would come and study Hasidus. So Rabbi Khan started to befriend this guy. Now, the truth is, I didn't start the story at the right place. So keep this in mind, okay? What happened one day is that Rabbi Khan is walking on Eastern Parkway, and all of a sudden, like somebody's honking his horn, a guy with a big afro, and he shouts through the window, Rabbi Khan, and so he goes over to the car, and he says, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to be a student in Lakewood, and you told me that if I ever change my mind and that I want to study Chassidut, that you would learn Chassidut with me. Okay? So Rabbi Khan takes a look at him, and this is the guy. Going back to he's the guy that when other students told him, if you can get this guy to study Chassidut, half the yeshiva is going to follow him. So Rabbi Khan started befriending him, but he wasn't interested in studying Chassidut at all. He wasn't interested. So what happened? One day, while he's still a student in Lakewood, he comes over to Rabbi Khan and he says, I'd like to see the Lubavitcher Rabbi. Could you please see if you can get me an appointment? So Rabbi Khan said, I'll try. It's not so easy. So you might have to wait a couple of months. And then he came back and he says, I got you an appointment for 2 weeks from now, late at night, but only for 1 minute. Now, just know that, and that's the way it was. Most people, we went into the Rebbe, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 25 seconds, it was like, and that was that, and rarely did the Rebbe keep somebody for longer than that. So he says, you can see the Rebbe for 1 minute. He says, that's fine. He came a couple of weeks later for the appointment. Rabbi Khan was waiting in the antechamber, and the man went in there. The student went in there for supposedly for 1 minute, and the Rebbe kept him there for well over 45 minutes. When he came out, he just walked past Rabbi Khan, and he never spoke to him again for years and years, until that day where he's honking his horn and saying to him, I want to study Chassidut. So Rabbi Khan started teaching him Chassidut, and as they became closer friends, one day Rabbi Khan says to him, listen, I'm not being nosy, but among Chassidim, if you had an experience with the Rebbe, and you think that there's something that others could learn from it, we share it. So would you mind telling me, what was your visit with the Rebbe about? You went in there for just 1 minute, and you were there for over 45 minutes. What was that about? So he says, I'll tell you gladly. He says, I went in there because I was working on a very difficult problem in the Talmud. And all the rabbis, all the Rosh Yeshivas that I asked for a solution to this problem, their answers, their solutions didn't satisfy me. I just couldn't accept their solutions. I didn't think that they were right. And I wanted to know how to interpret this particular concept, the passage, whatever it was. So, even though in the literature world, the Rebbe didn't have the greatest, not everybody held him in the highest regard, but, there are others who said he was an awesome scholar. So I decided, I've asked everybody, I'm not satisfied with their answers, so I'm going to ask him also. And when you told me that I can only see the Rebbe for 1 minute or less, I figured that's perfectly fine, because either he can explain it to me in 1 minute, or he also doesn't know the answer. Okay? So I came in there and I handed the Rebbe my question, and in 45 seconds he cleared it up totally. And I thanked him. I'm getting up to leave, and the Rebbe says, "Wait a minute. Are you learning Chassidut?" And I said, "No." This guy's a real litvak. He didn't. I said, no. He said, you have to learn Chassidut. So I said, no, I don't. My father was a great scholar. My grandfather was a great scholar. They never learned Chassidut. I don't have to learn Chassidut. I can be a good Jew without it. The Rebbe says, if you don't learn Chassidut, someday it's going to happen that someone's going to insult your learning. And you are going to be offended by that. And that will get you upset. And then you will do the following transgression, which will then lead you to do the next one. And he spelled out a list of 10 transgressions in order. Okay. And he says, you really, if you're not going to learn Chassidut, you're going to fall victim to this. And I said to the Rebbe, I don't think so. And this discussion went on for 45 minutes. And the Rebbe repeated himself a good, maybe 3 times. You have to learn Chassidut, you have to learn Chassidut, you have to learn Chassidut. And finally, I said to the Rebbe, okay, I'll think about it. And I got up and I left. And that's why I didn't speak to you after that encounter with the Rebbe. He said to Rabbi Khan, that's why I didn't speak to you after that, because I didn't want you to try to convince me any further. So what happened? I went back to the yeshiva, and a few weeks later, I'm working on like a serious problem in the yeshiva library, a serious problem for like 3 weeks on a very deep Talmudic problem. And after 3 weeks, I came up with what I considered to be a good solution. As I'm walking back into the study hall, into the Beis Medrash, I hear 2 of my friends talking, and they're just beginning to discuss the problem that I had just spent 3 weeks on. And so I said, oh, great, here's an opportunity to share my insights. And I said, oh, hey, I hear you're talking about this. I just spent 3 weeks on this. And I told them what I came up with. And they looked at each other. Really? After 3 weeks, that's all you came up with? That's very poor. And I felt very insulted. And I went back to the dorm room, to the dormitory. And lo and behold, 24 hours later, I realized I had done every one of those transgressions that the Rebbe warned me about in succession. And I said to myself, doesn't mean anything. But the Rebbe also warned me, he says, it's going to happen a few times. And eventually, if you don't learn Chassidut, you're going to leave the yeshiva world. And sure enough, a couple of months later, the incident repeated itself. I did a lot of research on something, and again, my solutions were insulted. And again, I went through that whole process. And guess what? I lost my taste for learning. I went to university, and I'm a math professor. Got married to a Jewish girl, and I have a 10-year-old boy. So what happened? So he says, one day my son comes home from school in grade 5, and he says to me, Dad, and this guy, he says, I'm living in Queens somewhere. He says, Dad, somebody called me a stinking Jew today. Why did they call me that? And I realized that I never shared with my son what it's about, what being Jewish is about. So I went up to the attic to see what I had from my earlier days. What I had from my earlier days, and I found a couple of copies of Talmud, and I thought to myself, well, my son isn't really ready to understand what this is yet. And one day I walk into this store and I see this Jewish newspaper called the Jewish Press, which was like not considered to be like a great literary paper, but I'm looking in it and I see that it has these comics about the rabbis from the Talmud, cartoon comics. So I figured, okay, I'll buy it and I'll show him a couple of these stories about these rabbis. And we'll talk about it. So I'm looking through the paper and I see that there's an ad from Lubavitch that on Tuesday night at such and such a time, there's going to be a Farbrengen. The public is invited. A gathering with the Rebbe. Strangely, I found myself in Crown Heights on Tuesday night. I never go there, but I found myself there and I parked the car and I went into the Farbrengen. And I'm there for about a half an hour, and all of a sudden I hear the Rebbe say, Medarf learn in Chassidus. You have to learn Chassidut. And he repeats the whole speech that he gave me in his office 15 years earlier. So I thought to myself, well, he for sure doesn't recognize me. I don't look like a yeshiva guy anymore at all, especially with this afro. And there's a few thousand people here. So I guess this is a speech that he just repeats every so often to everybody. Anyway, I left. And then a couple of weeks later, about another Jewish press. And guess what? In Chabad, they're always celebrating the days that the Rebbe's got out of prison. Every one of them was arrested at some point and was in prison, And there's another ad for another Farbrengen on such and such a night. And guess what? I found myself in Crown Heights again. And this time I stayed for about 45 minutes. And guess what? The Rebbe says, you have to learn Chassidus, because if you don't learn Chassidus, somebody's going to insult you in the way you're learning Torah, and and it's going to lead you to do this, and it's going to lead you to do that, it's going to lead you to do that. And I say to myself, okay, this just is a common theme speech that he just keeps on repeating and so on. He for sure doesn't recognize me. A few weeks later, there was another Farbrengen, and again, I found myself there. This time I stayed a bit longer. And again, the Rebbe repeats the same speech. So I thought to myself, maybe he does recognize me. And I said, if he gives me one more sign, then I'll study Chassidut. And just as I was about to leave, they announced that nobody should leave, because at the end of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe is going to give everybody Kais Shel Bracha. He's going to give everybody some wine from his cup, and you'll be coming in front of the Rebbe and you'll say L'chaim. So I decided, okay, I'll stay for that. It's a long line. I finally come in front of the Rebbe. I put my cup out. The Rebbe pours some wine in my cup, and he smiles at me and he says, so, are you ready to learn Chassidus now? Okay. The story is mind-blowing. Okay? It's just amazing. Now, so the big emphasis, this is in relation to your question. Understand? What is learning Chassidut really all about? Learning Chassidut is not just like, now I have a deeper understanding of this, now I understand this better. Yeah, of course. But what it's really all about is Bittul Hayesh, nullifying the egotistical self and becoming a complete channel, a complete vessel, completely dedicated to bringing Hashem's will and light into the world. That's what Chassidus is really all about. A nice interpretation of this and a nice interpretation of that, that's beautiful. Okay? It's beautiful. But the goal of it is not just so that you now have a new layer of understanding and interpretation of the Torah. The goal of it is know your makeup, right? You go in the beginning of the Tanya yet? The very first page. So the very first page of the Tanya begins with the word Tanya. Tanya b'seif Perek Gimel Nida. It says at the end of the third chapter in Masechet Nida, Mashbiin oto tehi tzadik v'al tehi rasha. That your neshama, before it comes down to this world, is administered an oath. You shall be a righteous person and do not be wicked. Okay? So the Tanya goes on and raises a bunch of questions and that is, but the motto of the Tanya is the verse in that Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, don't think that the Torah is up in the sky, that you need to send somebody to go and get it for you. Don't think that the Torah is on the other side of the ocean, that you need somebody else to go get it for you. But rather, this is something very close to you. It's it's in the power of your speech and the power of your mind and the power of your heart to achieve it. And the whole Tanya is about, okay, how do we achieve this? So what it's all about is first of all, understand what's your makeup. Understand that your makeup is primarily your soul is a part of Hashem from above. But your soul is living in a body in this world. It can only do a mitzvah so long as it's in a body in this world. But your body has its own operating system called Nefesh Bahamit. And this operating system is primarily interested in self-preservation and self-gratification, which is not bad. But once it gets corrupted, it works differently. Okay? And your soul is going to have to struggle with this aspect of your being. Yaakov and Esav are the expressions of that. Okay, you're going to have to struggle with this and understand the struggle. Here are the techniques. This is the book of spiritual martial arts. Okay, this is the book. The Tanya is the book of spiritual martial arts. How to maintain consciousness that you're in a shaman. Like, for example, Dr. Rebbe says, why is it that we love so few people? Why is the mitzvah is to love every one of your brothers and sisters, right? And also the rest of the world, but there are degrees, just like you have to take care of your own children more than my children, understand? Okay? So how, because usually my perception of myself is that I'm a physical being, and as a physical being, you are too, and we're living in a world of limited resources, so then I better grab it before you grab it, right? But if you learn to see yourself primarily as an neshama, as a soul, this is my primary identity. I am a soul, which is a part of Hashem from above. So then my soul doesn't really take up space. And you're a soul, a part of Hashem, no less than I am. We are both part of the same unity. And then I can love you, even if you happen to be a jerk. Okay? You understand? I might not accept your certain things that you're doing, but I still could love you. Okay? And you could love me even if I am a jerk. Okay? You understand? It's a question of how you define yourself. And that's what the Chassidus is all about. So the reality is, you're learning, you're a scholar, you're giving a good shiur. Everybody thinks, wow, you taught such beautiful Torah. Your Yetzer Hara is going to come and say, right? You're a Jewish person, you're going to say the blessing Asher B'char Banu Mikol Hamim, which is true. It's written in the Torah, right? But your Yetzer Hara is going to come and say, I'm better than. And the second you do that, you lose it. Okay? And we were just looking at a piece in the Tanya from yesterday's portion. It's not just that, we're going to bring down Hashem's light for us. When we bring down Hashem's light properly, the whole world will be illuminated. And all the nations are going to come and say, let's go serve God all together. Okay? So we're not doing this just for ourselves. And that's why when I told you the story that when Reb Shlomo said, yes, we're the chosen people, but we're chosen to show everybody else how special they are too. But how do you do that? You don't go and be condescending and say, hey, come here, let me tell you how special you are. Kishin Tochus, you know. Who needs that? Right? But if you really are connected with Hashem's light, and somebody meets you and you say, hi, how are you? In that sincere way, right? That person's going to feel like, hey, this feels different. This feels good. This feels holy. Okay? But don't think that just because you're learning the material and because you can expound on it and you can give a great talk and so on and so on, don't think that you're going to be there already. On the contrary, Kol Hagadol Mechaviro, whoever is greater than his fellow, also has a bigger Yetzer Hara, also has a bigger evil inclination. Yeah.
Just like to insert an idea. The Rebbe teaches that, like the Chazal, one of the teachings is that every year the Kohen Gadol would go into the Beis Hamikdash and they tie him to a rope, and they come out and he died, then they pull him out on the rope. And this happened year after year. So basically, the thought that the Kohen Gadol had, the reason why he died was he would get to the Kadosh Kadoshim, and then he would think that he deserves to be there. That was the thought that the Rebbe explains that he would have,
and that's what
would kill. Then he would die.
And then he would die, right? So in other words, the higher you are, right? Even a very subtle straying from where your consciousness is supposed to be is extremely dangerous. Same thing, like for example, in surgery, like if I'm cutting my fingernails and I didn't cut them exactly right, and don't look. Actually, I bite them, but okay. No big harm done, right? But if a brain surgeon would work on somebody's brain the way I cut my nails, forget it. Right? Forget it. Okay. So that's the reality that we live in. Okay. So this was all about your question. The best we could do is that when you start doing something, you think about, why am I doing this? What do I want to achieve over here? Okay, and say a prayer, please Hashem, this is what I'd like to achieve, and it should work. You might want to have like a little alarm on your phone, okay, that's going to go off every 15 minutes as a reminder to say the prayer again. The story with I think I came across it again last week. So as I mentioned before, the way Hasidus was distributed was that there were people with great memories, and they would take a teaching of the Rebbe or something that the Rebbe recited, and going back now to the time of the Baal Tanya, and until the printing came around, and they would memorize an entire teaching or more than one, verbatim, and then these guys, their job was to travel around from community to community to recite the Rebbe's words verbatim, so that the others can study it as well. So there was this young man who was really good at it, and wherever he went, like he was so much appreciated, and they heaped praises on him unbelievably. So he stopped doing it. When he came back to I think it was by the Mittler Rebbe, so the Rebbe asked him, I heard that you stopped going around reciting Chassidut. Why did you stop? Might have been by the Rebbe Merashid or the Rashab, I'm not sure which one of us. And he says, Rebbe, I would people would praise me so much that my ego was just getting so inflated. I just couldn't handle it. And so I just figured, I'm just not going to do this anymore because I just didn't know I couldn't handle it. So the Rebbe said to him in Yiddish, "Sollst du stinken als wie a Zibberle, aber Chassidus wirst du chasen," which means, even if you're going to stink like an onion, you still have to go on and do this work of reciting Chassidus. When I told Judy the story, she said, yeah, we'll hold our noses, but we want to hear the teaching. You understand? In other words, maybe you're a jerk and you don't know how to handle the praise or whatever it is, but you are the one who has the knowledge. You're the one who has the teachings. So you have to deliver them anyway. The fact that you're going to burn in hell because you're not doing it in the best way possible, that's your problem. But we need the goods. Hand it over.
Wow.
Understand? We need the teachings. Now, hopefully, you're not going to turn us off with the stench of your onions. Okay. Hopefully, your onions aren't too overbearing. But you got the goods. Let's have it. You don't know how to deliver it in the best way. Okay, so you'll shish kebab one day.
It's
Huh?
hard to grasp exactly
What?
that teaching is.
Yeah.
I have to understand that.
If there's somebody else who could do it better than you and they're doing it, so then shut your mouth and let them do it. Okay.
Right.
But if you happen to be the one that has the teaching right there, so to tell the people, listen, I've got this to deliver. It might not come in the best packaging. So take the responsibility of receiving the goods and don't get stuck with the bad packaging. I used to tell kids in school when they would say, "Oh, your class was boring," or "This teacher is boring," I'd say, "So what's the student's responsibility?" Let's say a teacher is boring. We've all been blessed with such teachers, right? So what's my responsibility as a student? My responsibility as a student is to think of how to help the teacher make it not boring. And that could be done in so many different ways. One is by really actively listening, by the way you ask questions, by active listening. That means you're making it clear to the teacher, I really want to hear more, and so on. Because teachers need to be inspired. Mm-hmm. Teachers need to be inspired, and sometimes you just need your students to inspire you. Okay, there's no question about it. I can give the same share in two different crowds. In one crowd, it could be like really on fire and alive, and in another crowd is like false fly on his face. Sometimes it's my fault, and sometimes it's the fault of the people that are sitting there. You understand? Sometimes there could be just one person in the room that just is igniting you in a really in an amazing way. Okay? So I can sit down and learn a page of Gemara and say, oh wow, this is boring. I can sit down and learn a page of Gemara and say, wow, it's the same page. This is unbelievable.
How do you how do you get yourself into that zone?
That's the Shem Yichud, the intention before you start. to learn with humility, and to learn with the awareness that you are now taking God's mind and absorbing it into your mind. Now, if you would really be aware of that, you would just be trembling with every word. But okay, so we're not at that level. Okay. So remember the story that Reb Leibel the Eger came from a family of Misnagdim, and he became a chassid by the Katzkar. He was 18 years old when he came to the Katzkar the first time, and it was Yom Kippur night. Davening was over, and he's sitting and learning with the Bris Medrash. And there's some chassidim that are lying on the benches and sleeping and snoring. And this guy comes in with a bottle of wine, Yom Kippur night. Goes over to his friend, shoves him, and he says, Makel, did you make Kiddush yet? Remember the story? He says, did you make Kiddush yet? He says, leave me alone, I'm sleeping. Makel, it's Yom Kippur night, it's the holiest night of the year, you got to make Kiddush. Okay, let's do it fast. And the Leibel is sitting there on the other side of the room, can't believe what he's seeing. And the guy pours him a cup of wine, and Makel gets up and says, and the Leibel screams, stop! And they look at him, what do you want? He says, you're not allowed to do that. And they say, who says? He says, it says in the Shulchan Aruch, in the code of Jewish law. Get out of here, kiddo. Come on, Makel Kiddush, it's late. So he starts again. So Baruch, and the Leibel screams, stop! And they say, what do you want? He says, you're not allowed to do that. Who said? It says in the Torah. Kiddo, get out of here. Come on, Makel Kiddush. So Baruch, and he starts to say God's name, and the Leibel screams and says, stop! And they say, what do you want? You're not allowed to do that. Who said? And he says, God says. Oh, God says? Okay. They put it down. That's how they initiated him. Right? Are you learning a book? Or are you learning God's words? Okay, we should all, Reb Shlomo used to say, bless me and I bless you back. We should, these are good words. Amen.
All right.
No.
Amen.
Okay. So listen, tomorrow's a fast day, but